There is something happening right now that most women over 45 have no idea about, and it could already be affecting you in ways you have never considered, not in a distant theoretical way. Right now, inside your body, in the way your immune system fights, or quietly fails to fight, what comes at it. While the world panics about Hantavirus, and rightfully so, there is one group of women that almost nobody is talking about. Women going through menopause. And what I am about to share with you today is not speculation. It is not fear-mongering. It is clinical reality. After more than 2 decades of treating women in this exact stage of life, I can tell you with certainty that menopause does not just change how you feel. It changes how your body fights. It fundamentally alters how your immune system responds to every threat it encounters. And when a virus like Hantavirus enters the picture, the consequences for a menopausal woman can be profoundly different and far more severe than for anyone else. I want to tell you about one of my patients, a 52-year-old woman. Let us call her Margaret. Margaret was the kind of person who made you believe that discipline could outrun aging. She walked 4 miles every morning before the sun came up. She watched what she ate. She took her supplements. She had always been the strong one in her family, the one everyone leaned on, the one who never complained. So when she came to my office one afternoon with fatigue so heavy she could barely keep her eyes open, I knew something was wrong. This was not the Margaret I knew. She had muscle aches that made her wince when she sat down. A low fever that kept appearing and disappearing, not high enough to feel alarming, but stubborn enough to drain her energy completely. And there was something else, a heaviness in her chest, a pressure on her lungs she could not explain. She told me she thought it was menopause. She had been dealing with hot flashes, brain fog, and sleepless nights for months, and she assumed this was just another wave. Another bad chapter in the book she had been forced to read without a table of contents. But when I ran her labs, the picture was very different from what either of us expected. Her inflammatory markers were elevated well beyond what menopause alone could explain. Her white blood cell count told a story her symptoms alone could not tell. Margaret did not just have menopausal fatigue. She had an active viral infection that had slipped past her immune system with almost no resistance. Her body had barely put up a fight. And the reason it slipped through so easily, the reason her immune system practically held the door open, had everything to do with what menopause had already done to her defenses over the previous 3 years. This is the conversation no one is having, not in the news, not in the doctor's office, not in the public health advisories about Hantavirus. And it is the conversation that could save your life. You see, most people think of menopause as a hormonal event. Hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, maybe some weight gain around the middle. And yes, all of those things are real. But what most women do not understand, and what most doctors never take the time to explain, is that menopause is also an immunological event. A quiet earthquake beneath the surface. When estrogen declines, it does not just affect your reproductive system. It reshapes every single layer of your immune defense. And that is exactly what makes Hantavirus, and many other viral threats, far more dangerous for women in this stage of life. Let me walk you through the first reason, and it is perhaps the most fundamental one. Estrogen is not just a reproductive hormone. Most women think of it as the hormone behind their cycle and fertility, but it is far more profound. It is one of the most powerful immune regulators in the female body. For decades, estrogen has been quietly orchestrating your immune response, enhancing natural killer cells that hunt and destroy infected cells, supporting antibody production, regulating inflammation so it activates when needed, but never spirals out of control. Estrogen is the conductor of an incredibly complex symphony, keeping every instrument in time and in tune. And during menopause, that conductor walks off the stage. When estrogen levels plummet by 60 to 80% within months, your immune system loses one of its most critical modulators. Natural killer cells, responsible for destroying virus-infected cells before they spread, become measurably less responsive. They are still present, but they are slower to activate, less aggressive, less precise. Research in leading immunology journals has shown that postmenopausal women have significantly lower natural killer cell activity compared to premenopausal women. The decline is consistent, reproducible, and clinically meaningful. Now place that biological reality into the context of hantavirus, a virus that attacks the endothelial cells lining your blood vessels and can trigger a massive cascading immune response. That delay in natural killer cell activation, that loss of precision and aggression in your first line of cellular defense, can be the difference between a contained infection your body manages quietly and a crisis that spirals out of control before you even realize something is seriously wrong. This is not theory. This is measured, documented biology, and it is the biology that most women going through menopause are never warned about. The second reason cuts even deeper into the machinery of your immune response, and it involves something called the cytokine system. When your body detects a viral invader, any viral invader, it releases signaling molecules called cytokines. Think of them as molecular alarm bells. They race through your bloodstream, telling your immune cells exactly where to go, what to attack, how aggressively to respond, and critically, when to stop. In a hormonally balanced body, this response is remarkably precise. It rises to meet the threat, neutralizes it, and then recedes. Proportional, self-regulating, elegant. But in menopause, the balance breaks down. Without estrogen's regulatory hand, the cytokine response becomes unpredictable, dysregulated. It can underreact to a dangerous invader, letting it establish a foothold while the immune system fumbles. And then, recognizing it has fallen behind, it can overcorrect violently, flooding the body with inflammatory cytokines that damage not the virus, but your own healthy tissue, your own organs, your own lungs. This overcorrection is what researchers call a cytokine storm. And hantavirus is one of the viruses most notorious for triggering exactly this kind of catastrophic immune overreaction. Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, the most lethal form of hantavirus infection, is, at its core, a cytokine storm centered in the lungs. And here is what is so terrifying about it. The virus itself does not destroy your lung tissue directly. Your own immune system does the damage. The cascade of inflammatory molecules causes the tiny blood vessels in your lungs to become permeable, leaking plasma and fluid into the air sacs where oxygen exchange happens. Your lungs begin filling with fluid, not because the virus is consuming your tissue, but because your own defense system has lost all restraint. It has turned its weapons inward. And when that defense system is already prone to dysregulation because of years of menopausal hormonal changes, the risk of this uncontrolled cascade increases in ways that should deeply concern every woman in this phase of life. I have watched this dynamic play out in my clinic, not with hantavirus specifically, but with influenza, with respiratory infections that should have been manageable. Women in their 50s who develop what begins as a moderate respiratory illness that then escalates with alarming speed. Infections that resolve in younger women within days, dragging on for weeks. I held the hand of a 60-year-old patient who arrived thinking she had caught a lingering cold and ended up needing supplemental oxygen for 3 days. Her body had turned its inflammatory response against itself, and the root cause traced back to the same disrupted immunological regulation that menopause had set in motion years earlier. The third reason challenges what most women think they know about immune defense because it involves a system that almost nobody discusses, the mucosal barrier. Before your white blood cells ever engage a virus, before your antibodies lock onto a pathogen, your body has a first line of defense that is physical, chemical, and actively immune competent. It is the mucous membranes that line your respiratory tract, your nasal passages, throat, bronchial tubes, and lungs. These membranes are coated with a complex arsenal of immune molecules, secretory immunoglobulin A, antimicrobial peptides, embedded immune cells, that together form a living, breathing shield against airborne invaders. They trap pathogens. They neutralize them on contact. They prevent them from ever reaching the deeper tissues, where real damage begins. And Hantavirus, which is primarily transmitted through inhalation of aerosolized particles, from rodent droppings, urine, or contaminated nesting materials, must breach this barrier to establish an infection. This is where menopause delivers a blow that few women see coming. Estrogen is essential for maintaining the thickness, moisture, and immune function of mucosal surfaces throughout your body. When estrogen declines during menopause, these membranes begin to atrophy. They thin. They dry out. They produce fewer protective antibodies and antimicrobial substances. Most women experience this as vaginal dryness, one of the most discussed symptoms of menopause. But the very same process is unfolding in your respiratory tract simultaneously. Your nasal passages become drier and more prone to cracking. The mucous lining of your bronchial tubes thins. The protective coating of your lungs weakens. The fortress wall develops cracks. And inhaled pathogens, including aerosolized hantavirus particles stirred up from a dusty shed or forgotten storage room, find a far easier path into your body than they would have just a few years earlier. It is like removing the outer wall of a castle. The defenders inside may still be armed, but the enemy no longer needs a siege to get through. And this is exactly why I feel so strongly about sharing something that has truly made a difference for many of my patients facing this exact situation. Over the years, as I watched woman after woman arrive in my office with weakened defenses they did not even know they had, I searched relentlessly for ways to help them strengthen their bodies during this transition, not just treating the visible symptoms, but actually rebuilding the deeper defenses that menopause quietly dismantles from the inside out. I found something that has been remarkably effective in my clinical experience, and I wanted to make it accessible to as many women as possible. You will find it in the first link in the description below this video and in the pinned comment at the top. I genuinely believe it could change the way you experience this chapter of your life. The fourth reason is one of the most insidious, because it operates silently, constantly, and invisibly, and most women have absolutely no idea it is happening inside them. It is called inflammaging. Researchers coined this term to describe the chronic, low-grade systemic inflammation that develops as we age, and that accelerates dramatically during and after menopause. Even before a virus like hantavirus enters your system, menopause has already shifted your baseline inflammatory state upward. Your body is not resting at zero inflammation. It is simmering, constantly, like a furnace that cannot be turned down. Pro-inflammatory cytokines, interleukin-6, tumor necrosis factor alpha, circulate at chronically elevated levels. C-reactive protein, a reliable marker of systemic inflammation, climbs steadily after menopause. Your immune system is in perpetual low-level activation, burning resources and keeping your tissues under quiet stress, even when there is no actual threat present. You might think being on constant alert would mean a faster response when a real invader arrives, but the cruel irony is precisely the opposite. Chronic inflammation exhausts your immune system. It depletes reserves and desensitizes the pathways that need to fire when real danger appears. Imagine an army standing at combat readiness for months without rest. When the actual enemy attacks, when hantavirus breaches your thinned mucosal barriers, those soldiers are fatigued. Their ammunition is spent on false alarms, and they have far less capacity to mount the overwhelming response a dangerous virus demands. Peer-reviewed studies in gerontology and clinical immunology have confirmed that this inflammaging phenomenon is one of the primary reasons postmenopausal women experience more severe outcomes from viral infections across the spectrum. The immune system is not merely weaker in some vague sense, it is tired, overtaxed, running on a baseline of chronic activation that paradoxically makes it less capable of responding to an acute crisis when one arrives. And here is what makes this particularly chilling in the context of hantavirus specifically. This virus has a specific cellular target, the vascular endothelium, the delicate lining of your blood vessels. In postmenopausal women, those endothelial cells are already under siege from chronic inflammation, already showing microscopic damage, already compromised. When a virus that specifically targets these weakened cells arrives in a body where they are already inflamed and vulnerable, it finds easier entry. The damage it inflicts compounds the pre-existing deterioration, and the resulting vascular leakage, the terrifying hallmark of severe hantavirus infection, where plasma pours out of blood vessels into surrounding tissues, becomes more rapid, more extensive, and significantly harder to control or reverse. The fifth reason is the one that haunts me most as a physician, because it has nothing to do with cells or molecules or laboratory results. It is about perception. It is about the dangerous lies we tell ourselves when our bodies are trying to warn us. It is the fact that menopausal symptoms mask and mimic the early warning signs of hantavirus infection so perfectly that women dismiss potentially life-saving signals as just another bad day in menopause. Consider this carefully. The early symptoms of hantavirus, the initial phase before the disease escalates to its most dangerous form, include deep fatigue, widespread muscle aches, fever, headaches, dizziness, chills, and sometimes nausea or abdominal pain. Now recall what menopause feels like on a difficult day. The bone-crushing fatigue that no amount of sleep resolves, the muscle and joint pain that appears from nowhere, hot flashes that feel indistinguishable from fever, the sudden heat, the flushing, the drenching sweat, the headaches, the dizziness when you stand, the unexplained nausea. The symptom overlap is not partial. It is nearly complete. I have witnessed the consequences of this overlap firsthand. Margaret, my patient, the active, disciplined 52-year-old, endured escalating symptoms for 14 days before she came to see me. 2 full weeks. Because every single morning she woke up feeling worse. She told herself the same story. It is menopause. It will pass. Every new ache was hormones. Every fever was a hot flash. She had been conditioned by years of dismissive medical appointments, by a culture that treats menopause as a minor inconvenience, by well-meaning people who told her to just push through, to believe that suffering was the price of being a woman of a certain age. That conditioning, that deeply ingrained normalization of pain and exhaustion, is one of the most dangerous currents in women's health today. When you have spent years being told your symptoms are just hormonal, just natural, just something every woman endures, you eventually stop trusting your own alarm system. You stop recognizing when something genuinely new and dangerous has entered the equation. And that delay, those lost days, that squandered window when early intervention could have made all the difference, can transform a treatable early-stage infection into an irreversible medical catastrophe. Hantavirus caught in its initial prodromal phase is manageable with supportive medical care. But hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, once the disease crosses into its cardiopulmonary phase, carries a mortality rate that can exceed 35%. More than 1 in 3 patients who reach that stage will not survive, and the dividing line between the treatable phase and the lethal phase often comes down to one variable: whether the patient recognized the warning signs and sought help before the window closed. For women in menopause, those critical early signals are buried beneath years of symptoms they have been systematically trained to ignore. This is why I refuse to stay silent about this. The intersection of menopause and viral vulnerability is not an academic footnote. It is a public health blind spot of staggering proportions. Women in menopause are not classified as a high-risk group for viral infections. They receive no specialized guidance during viral outbreaks. They are not told, clearly, directly, urgently, that their changing hormones are systematically weakening the immune architecture that protects them from serious illness. That must change. And it starts with you hearing this today. I want you to know something important. You are not powerless in this. Not remotely. There are real, evidence-based, clinically validated ways to support and strengthen your immune system during menopause. Approaches that go far beyond the standard advice of eating a bit better and trying to sleep more. I have spent years, not months, researching, testing, and assembling what actually works, drawing from peer-reviewed science and the real outcomes of real patients in my own practice. Because I believe every woman navigating this transition deserves access to this knowledge, I have put together something specifically designed for women who want to reclaim control over their immune resilience during menopause. You can find it in the pinned comment and in the very first link below this video. It is something I wish I could personally place in the hands of every patient who walks into my office. So what can you do right now, today, with what you have learned? First, and most importantly, stop normalizing every symptom. If something feels different from your usual menopausal pattern, if fatigue is deeper, if aches are sharper, if fever persists in a way that does not match your typical hot flashes, do not wait 2 weeks hoping it passes. Get it checked. Call your doctor. Go to urgent care. Trust your instincts over your conditioning. Second, understand that your immune system has fundamentally changed. It is not the same defense network you had at 30 or even 40. It requires different support now, different nutritional strategies, different lifestyle approaches, different medical conversations. Third, take environmental precautions against Hantavirus seriously. If you are cleaning out a garage, shed, storage unit, cabin, or any enclosed space where rodents may have been, ventilate the space thoroughly before entering. Wear a properly fitted N95 respirator. Wear disposable gloves. Never sweep or vacuum rodent droppings. This launches the particles into the air where you can inhale them. Instead, wet contaminated areas with a diluted bleach solution first. Then carefully wipe clean. These steps matter for everyone, but they are especially critical for women whose mucosal barriers and immune defenses are already compromised by menopause. And finally, initiate the conversation with your doctor that almost nobody is having. The conversation that gets lost in 10-minute appointments focused only on hot flashes and hormone prescriptions. Ask specifically about your immune health. Ask how menopause is affecting your body's capacity to fight infections. Ask what concrete steps you can take, not just to manage the symptoms everyone talks about, but to genuinely fortify your immune resilience during this pivotal transition. Because menopause is not the end of your health story. It is a chapter, a demanding, transformative chapter that requires more awareness, more attention, more nuance, and far more respect than it has ever received. Your body is changing. That is an undeniable fact. But it is not broken. It is not failing. It is adapting to a new biological reality. And with the right knowledge, the right support, and a genuine understanding of what is actually unfolding beneath the surface, you can navigate this stage with strength, with clarity, with confidence, and with your health firmly in your own hands. I have seen it happen hundreds of times. Women who walked into my office certain that their best years were finished. Women who had been told by other physicians to simply accept the decline and manage the symptoms. Women who discovered that truly understanding their own biology, understanding what menopause actually does to their immune system, their inflammation pathways, their mucosal integrity, was the first and most powerful step toward reclaiming a vitality they believed was gone forever. I want that awakening for you. Every single one of you listening right now. If this video opened your eyes to something you did not know before, then please subscribe to this channel. There is so much more I need to share. Conversations that are not happening anywhere else. Truths about women's health buried under decades of outdated assumptions, and real actionable solutions grounded in science. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next video, because this conversation is far from over, and your health, your real, complete, whole body health, deserves to be at the very center of it.